Do you actually have to be on cocaine to be on this podcast?
It's a great day to be a Wildcat!
Cocaine.
Surfing.
What is up, everybody? You're listening to yet another edition of Cocaine Willie. I am your commissioner, Bob Trollsby. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, the good chef, Andre Napier, and Fireball Matt Marchesini. And we are the official K-State representative on the College Huddle. And tonight, we are joined by none other than Wildcat Radio 2.0. And Brett Berry is the one representing Wildcat Radio. And they are the College Huddle representative for the Arizona Wildcats in a non-conference conference game, and in what will be our first football collaboration within the College Huddle community. So quick little round of applause there. But Brett, how are you doing tonight?
Doing good. Better after walking into Club Cocaine Willie or whatever that is.
I love it.
That's our group chat name, actually. So
yeah. It is. But first, before we get into the preview, the show is brought to you by our two sponsors, Annie Mae's Parlor and Pat's Beef Jerky. Annie Mae's Parlor is located at 616 North 12th Street in the heart of Aggieville in Manhattan, Kansas. Arizona fans who are listening to this, if you are going to the game, if you're going to Manhattan, be sure to check out Annie Mae's Parlor. You won't be disappointed. It is a lovely, lovely bar located in a basement that has been open for 50 years that we know of, and potentially longer than that, serving up the residents of Manhattan during Prohibition. Allegedly, that's not official, but they are a phenomenal establishment, and it's a great place to go on game days and school nights alike, Fridays or Saturdays, whenever the game day happens to be. This case, it's a Friday night. But I always make a point to go visit my auntie every time I come back to the Little Apple. They feature a wide variety of craft beers, craft cocktails, draft beers, everything in between. And they also have live entertainment, comedy, and all sorts of other events. Taking a quick peek at the schedule for this week. Let's see here. This is going to be dropping on Thursday, more than likely, but this is going to be dropping tonight, actually. So Thursday, September 12th, the Underground Guitar Pull is going to be happening at Annie Mae's Parlor. So be sure to check that out. Also, if you're happen to be listening to this tonight, Local Love Bingo is tonight as well. So all sorts of other events. Go check out www.animaze.com to get the full list, and be sure to tell them Cocaine Willie sent you. Whether you're an Arizona fan or not, be sure to tell them Cocaine Willie sent you. Also, the show is brought to you by Pat's Beef Jerky, located at 401 Main Street in Liebenthal, Kansas. Pat's Beef Jerky has been serving up the finest beef jerky in the Midwest for 34 years running, and they feature mouthwatering flavors like the classic beef jerky, the teriyaki beef jerky, and my personal favorite, the savory beef pepper sticks. There are 3 places where you can get yourself some Pat's Beef Jerky. You can pick it up either in person at the Fridge Liquor Store in Manhattan, or their original store at 401 Main Street in Liebenthal, Kansas. Last but not least, you can also get Pat's Beef Jerky online at www.patsbeefjerky.com. Chef is going to be doing a live taste test tonight while we're on the pod. As you can see, he's trying to get his jerky open, so he'll be providing a review as soon as he sinks his teeth into that one. But if you use the promo code CATS at checkout, that's CATS with a C, and we've got 2 cat pods tonight, you will receive 10% off your next order. So use the promo code CATS at checkout and visit www.patsbeefjerky.com to place your order today. Well, Brett, I don't know if you ever would have imagined that there would be a Friday night non-conference conference matchup between 2 Wildcats that are in the same conference, with you being one of them and Kansas State being the other. But as we gear up for this matchup this week, I guess, conference realignment. What are your thoughts on the new Big 12, the current iteration of the Big 12? Any parting words for the Pac-12 now that they're dead and buried, outside of the fact that Wazoo and Oregon State still have their logo on the field?
RIP to Pac-12. Thanks, but no thanks to the past commissioners. This really goes back to Larry Scott and the stumbling over the Pac-12 network, and there was a path forward there. And then George Klyavkov was kind of dealt a raw hand and didn't execute well on his own. But it's sad to see all the changes, and there's a lot of great tradition and history there, but we are unburdened by what has been, shall we say, here in 2024, and I think it's really exciting to move into the Big 12 and the new expanded Big 12. I think most Arizona fans were probably more supportive than most Pac-12 fan bases, largely because of the conference's reputation as a basketball conference. And then from a football perspective, I think it's a good level set for Arizona as we're facing the other Wildcats, and there's probably 8 to 10 teams that I think you could make an argument are going to have a lot of 60-40 games, and which side are they going to come down on, which really makes it exciting. It's different for us, coming into the entirely new conference with only a few Pac-12 brothers coming in where we're pretty familiar with, and we're kind of learning a bunch of new players, new coaching staffs, new playing styles. So it's all new to us, but I think that's partially what makes it kind of exciting. And then just the weirdness of the non-conference conference game between the Wildcats is, I'm pretty sure there's like a Simpsons meme of who are we, the Wildcats? Who are we going to beat, the Wildcats? That should probably be what the quote retweet is for all of our podcast tweets this week.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I guess, and real quick too, before we get into the meat and potatoes of the preview, why don't you just take a moment and share your story of Wildcat Radio 2.0, your relation to University of Arizona, covering the Wildcats. Just tell us a little bit more about your story and how you got into this.
Sure. So I'll start with my personal story, because I was actually just asked to be a guest host with Adam Green, my co-host. But that was, filling in for a guy that had just had, his second or third kid at the time. And that was like 2.5 years ago. So I think I'm just the co-host now. And so Wildcat Radio 2.0 has been around for a while. There's been kind of a rotating number of hosts. Some of the guys have moved on to other podcasts, or like Rob Bauer. We have as a guest sometime. He used to be an occasional host that does Beta Rank, if you've ever seen that on the Twitter machine, Sharp College Football. I personally have 2 degrees from the University of Arizona, so I'm twice as smart as all of you. And my co-host Adam, who unfortunately couldn't join tonight, he's still based in Arizona. I moved away to the Pacific Northwest with my wife about 9 months ago, but I actually still kept my season tickets. I went to the opening game in Tucson a couple weeks ago, and Adam used to be, he writes for AZ Desert Swarm on the SB Nation site pretty regularly. He's a big contributor there. Was in the past has been on local Phoenix radio, so he's kind of known in the Arizona circles, and he still skews towards being, an actual journalist. But because he keeps his fandom for Arizona, he doesn't consider himself a journalist as much, which is what makes our podcast a little bit more fun. But, our general MO is we want to try to be, more knowledgeable than the casual fan, but not go with all the hot takes, or just, be crazy about like, oh, this guy's terrible or this guy's awesome and we're the best at everything. And we try to have fun with it and take a more measured tone, I think.
That's like the complete opposite of Chef. You just describe Chef like,
what the hell, man?
In a nutshell. All right. Well, yeah, let's get started and kind of talk big picture with Arizona. So it would probably be said as an outsider, Arizona is kind of in a little bit of a transition period, just with Jed Fish, who obviously made the decision to go to Washington, which was kind of shady. I mean, again, as an outsider kind of looking at it, but you come off a 10-win season, an impressive victory against Oklahoma in the Alamo Bowl, which we all appreciated, beating Oklahoma. The key thing in the offseason, it seemed like, was trying to retain most of your key players. And really 2 of those guys that, were highly touted recruits and head coach Brett Brennan was able to keep were Noah Fafita, Titara McMillan. So kind of give us a little bit of your, thoughts about the offseason and, how are you feeling during some of those portions to kind of where the team has ended up here right now?
Yeah. So it's actually people that aren't Arizona fans don't realize that new head coach Brett Brennan actually finished second the first go around to Jed Fish. He is a guy that actually, for not being an alum, has a lot of ties to the university, which is kind of like that right sweet spot of not, my co-host really hates the notion of hiring alums because that, like, if they didn't go to the University of Arizona, would somebody else hire them or not, kind of thing. And it's harder to fire a legend if it doesn't go well. But he's actually really tied to the program. His wife graduated from the University of Arizona. He was a GA under Dick Tomey. I don't know if you guys, as K-State fans, know, Arizona football actually led the conference, led the Pac-10 then in wins in the 90s during the Dick Tomey era. People don't realize that. And so he is a Dick Tomey disciple in that that was his mentor. He actually spoke at Dick Tomey's funeral before he was ever the coach at Arizona a few years ago when he passed. And so there's a lot of positivity in that regard of having kind of that enough of a tie to the program that you're not just viewing this as a stepping stone, which a lot of schools kind of view. I know Adam and I, my co-host, if somebody's hiring you giving you money to take your coach away, it's already a win, guys. Take the money and be happy. It makes it easier to hire the next coach. It's been a long time since Arizona's done that. Typically, we're paying them $10 million to go away. See Kevin Sumlin, see Rich Rod, see I think it's literally like since like 92 since they had somebody get hired away. But Matt, your question is the right one also, where it's centered around, I've kind of had this whole working hypothesis all off season that retention is the new recruitment as a skill. And it was unclear when they hired Brent Brennan. Arizona had this great success. If Jed Fish had stuck around for one more year and gone to the playoffs and then bailed to the NFL or the Florida job, which, by the way, he's going to, Washington fans, I hate to tell you, if that Florida job opens up, he is on the first plane out there if they want it. So when the hire happened, it was kind of chaotic. Everybody kind of assumes the worst because Arizona fans assume that they can't have nice things, especially when it comes to football. But I for the College Huddle Network, I actually wrote a little fake column thing where I was kind of working around this thing where Jed Fish was, talks about building the culture. The problem is he didn't realize it, had a foundation that doesn't move very easily. It's not a mobile home kind of thing. And you hit on the two guys that I think are obviously the big names in Noah Fifita and Tedero McMillan, but it's beyond that. One of the things that Brent Brennan really did when he came in is harkening back to the Dick Tomey era of really embracing the Polynesian culture. And a lot of the roster, a lot of the offensive line, a lot of the defensive line, Fifita, T-Mac, and others, there's probably 15 or 20 guys on the roster on the low end that are, poly background. And when you build that family environment, it's hard to break that up. Plus, I'm not sure you guys kind of saw, there was a big donor for Arizona was pissed off at Jed Fish, who basically felt lied to and said, I'm going to write checks to make it really hard for you to steal all of our guys, and did. So Arizona kept 4/5 of its starting offensive line. They didn't graduate that many guys from a 10-win team. They had very few seniors last year, which is one of the reasons there was so much optimism. And even with all the turnover and departures, it probably, and especially in the age of the transfer portal and NIL, is a lower turnover than a typical team, especially one that's won 10 games. And so when Brent Brennan came in, the first thing was try to get stability, try to retain some of the guys, and you have the right kind of leadership in place, especially with Noah Fifita and T-Mac, that kind of the first dominoes to fall on. They lost some guys. There was a lot bigger deal of losing most of the guys that had just stepped on campus, or the true freshmen coming in really kind of got decimated, and a lot of them went to Seattle. But the general perception is Brennan and staff filled a lot of holes with the additions they got from the transfer portal, guys they brought over from San Jose State and some of these other places. And now it's like the real question is Brent Brennan able to be the great developer of talent that we all kind of assumed he was at San Jose State, where he's known for doing more with less, or if that was, just a kind of a one-time thing, because his record's not that impressive there. But if you know some of the stories of San Jose State, it's, maybe the most underfunded college football program, or well up there. And so, even through the high school recruiting class so far, Brent Brennan is generally, I think, has received a passing grade in terms of the offseason leading into the season. And now we're into the regular season where it's like, okay, now it's a results-based business.
Yeah.
And everybody agrees Brent Brennan is a great guy. My optimistic side is maybe Brent Brennan as the true, genuine guy is the antidote for the cutthroat NIL nature of college football today, because there's guys that bluntly, according to Noah Fafita's father, Washington wasn't the biggest NIL bag that was offered to them. It was Alabama.
Wow.
Right. And Arizona's not going to compete with Alabama if it comes to dropping bags. Right. And they can be competitive, but they're not going to be, Oregon that just, got 5 of the 5-star wide receivers and there's only 6 in the entire class. Like, they're not all going to play. They're just locking up the talent and seeing what comes through. Arizona's not going to compete with them initially, but they can be competitive, especially with the retention where, you're not placing the bets as much.
So with the guys that you're talking about with retaining, one of those guys was Noah Fafita.
Mm-hmm.
And with Brennan coming in, how did his scheme fit with Noah Fafita's playing style? Because obviously he was recruited by Jed Fish. Where does McMillan, where does Noah Fafita and all these guys that he retained fit with Brennan's scheme that he's bringing in?
Sure. So big picture, to just cut to the short answer, is Brennan and staff have tried to not change what wasn't broken in terms of scheme and terminology to try to make it easier as a transition. And bluntly, through 2 games against New Mexico and NAU, I think the general presumption is Arizona's not really shown the new elements of the offense and scheme, especially. So in terms of what's being asked of T-Mac and Noah Fafita, I'm not sure that they've changed all that much. I think as you get into the season, probably starting Friday, I think a lot of things are being held back to not give K-State too much stuff on film. I would expect to see a lot more 2 tight end pre-snap motion, read the defense, try to confuse the defense a little bit. Arizona's got probably 4 to 5 tight ends. They got some younger guys getting in the rotation, making their first catches of their career against NAU. They've worked in some guys, somewhat to their detriment in that really ugly win over NAU. But those are real snaps against, a real FCS football program, and that's better than stuff in practice. So the short answer is there's not that much that has changed, but also I don't think we've seen it all. And it's not just about Brent Brennan. Brent Brennan is only one of the 3 former head coaches on this new staff, because the offensive coordinator is former Syracuse head coach Dino Babers. He used to coach at Arizona. Has been around. It knows the program very well. His play calling and the scheme and everything on the offensive side was not well received against NAU because they literally didn't convert a first down the entire game on 3rd down. Against NAU for the first time in 21 years in any game, which was a little disconcerting. But I also just don't know if we've seen enough of the scheme that they're trying to implement with new wrinkles yet to speak to it too much.
Got it. And let's just get into some more detail on the offense. So I want to talk, the way we kind of do it is go position group by position group. So we'll start with quarterback. Let's talk about the golden boy, Noah Fafita. He entered the 2024 season as one of the most highly anticipated quarterbacks returning for any team in the new look Big 12. And there's no denying the hype given the statistics that he put up last year. He became the go-to option at quarterback during that Washington matchup in a loss, but a game where he put up 27 for 39 with 232 yards and 3 touchdowns. He then goes into a matchup on the road at USC and takes it to triple overtime. But that was the last time he lost a football game. And that was 338 days ago as we were recording this on September 9th, 2024. So the start to the season this year has been a little bumpier. You've mentioned the Northern Arizona game, sub 200-yard effort with 1 touchdown and 1 interception last week against Northern Arizona, and a much better showing against New Mexico. But that game also got off to a slower start, and they didn't really start to get humming really until the second half. So I think, how do you think the last week's lackluster performance and the slow start to the game against UNM, How do you think that's going to impact his mentality entering what might be the most raucous home environment that we've seen at K-State, and might be one of the most raucous home environments he's ever had to play an away game in, going into this matchup on Friday?
Yeah, so I'm going to mildly correct you for the UNM game, because the offense was humming real fast. Like, the first drive was a 99-yard and four play touchdown drive, right? And the offense, the two games for Arizona so far, in the first game, the offense was going crazy. T-Mac had 10 catches, 304 yards, 4 touchdowns, and was 6 inches away from 5 touchdowns. And the offense was getting anything they wanted. The defense was struggling with, UNM. Oh, sorry, my cat just jumped up here and is attacking my camera. You might see an orange tail flicker in front.
Oh, good. We like.
Oh, you went on mute, Bob.
We like the audio additive of having a cat, so
yeah,
we'll take it.
It's a cat fight week, man. So in that game, the defense is the one that struggled, missed tackles, sloppy, just getting kind of pushed around, getting out schemed. Against NAU was the exact opposite. That they had a lot of guys out. They had kind of a patchwork offensive line. Some of it was strategic of, if somebody's not 100% healthy, let's hold them out for this game, try guys at new positions. And that did not look great. I think some of those guys that were held out, especially on the offensive line, like Josh Baker, I think was held out in the NAU game. He's the one that calls out, the blocking schemes on the offensive side. He's kind of the center, the captain of the offensive line, especially when it comes to pass blocking. He was out during NAU, and that was Noah Fifita was under pressure a lot during that game, which was a primary issue. And then in that game, the defense held NAU to less than 200 total yards. So they did it's a tale of two games. And if they put together a complete game, which I think every Arizona fan is hoping to see, they're going to be the team that we all think they can be. But we also now have enough reason to doubt both the offense and defense on each of those games individually. So it's really a question of what's going to happen when it comes together. I think if Josh Baker's back, that's going to help the offensive line quite a bit. The starting left tackle got hurt in week 1, redshirt freshman, Rhino Tapatutai, if I pronounced that correctly. The Polynesian culture ruins our podcast because, as my co-host said on our pod a few weeks ago, I like this team's talent. I just don't like how it's spelled because it becomes a very hard thing to try to pronounce. The expectation is he's probably still out, and his original primary backup, I think, is probably still out. Oregon transfer, former 4-star tackle Michael Wooten. So they're kind of still moving some guys around, but I think having Josh Baker back will help with the pass protection scheme. Noah Fifita is not, I think he's listed at 5'10", and I think that's generous. But of course, if he was over 6 feet tall, he probably would have been, at USC out of high school, right? Because nobody ever doubted the man, they just doubted his stature kind of thing. So, to the question of how is he going to handle in the raucous road environment, I'm confident that the environment will not be the problem for Noah Fifita. I'd be more concerned about the offensive line handling the environment and the calls, and if they get confused on the scheme with some of these guys that are maybe playing, in only one of their first couple games at that position. And any quarterback that, isn't getting protected is never going to look that great. And the open question for Dino Babers on the offensive side of the game, where Arizona fans were frustrated, was, there was a lot of missed calls and scheme things, and NAU is doing a great job, but like a good coaching staff should be able to scheme around where your gaps are on the offensive line, or have tight ends chip in. And like, that's where people are wondering, were they just keeping it super vanilla and just trying to not show K-State anything? So to answer your question more directly and not in the longest roundabout answer possible, I'm not worried about Noah Fifita walking into a hostile road environment. He's been there before. I'm not even that worried about him handling at least some pressure, which is undoubtedly going to come. I am more concerned about the, untouched pressure where it's just setting him up for no chance of success, and where he could get, a turnover literally forced by a blindside sack or something like that.
Want to talk about the running backs a little bit, and admittingly, it's probably a unit that kind of has flown a little bit under the radar because we hear about Noah Fifita, T-Mac at wide receiver. But you have a couple running backs that have been 100-yard rushers this season. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, and then Quali Conley, I think. Is that how to pronounce it? Okay, cool. Just want to make sure.
Well, ESPN called him Quail the entire game.
Quail,
so
yeah.
there's been a lot of Quail Man
Yeah.
memes going around on the Arizona Twitter.
We dealt with that week 1. Very, very bad on ESPN's part. But
Shout out to Doug, though. Shout out to Doug.
Stop it. All right. But anyway.
Peppermint Patty, is Peppermint Patty making an appearance?
My boy Skeeter.
I was going to say, I thought Chef was going to come in with a skeeter.
Oh, damn.
Peppermint patties from Charlie Brown. Anyway, Krosky Merritt, unavailable last week. Sounded like there were some eligibility issues from what we saw. But Conley had a decent game. What do you expect from the two running backs in Manhattan? Do you think Krosky Merritt will be available? And, kind of in the first couple games, how they really kind of incorporated the rush game into their offense?
Yeah, so Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt also goes by Bill for reasons that are not quite fully explained. The funny thing is the NCAA reportedly cleared him for all the eligibility concerns coming into the season, which is why he played against New Mexico. And then someone somewhere reported something to the NCAA, and Arizona was acting out of abundance of caution is what they called it. So I don't know if anybody knows for sure if he will or will not be available for this game. He is probably the best all-around running back on this roster. Arizona lost a lot of talent from the running back room of like really well-rounded guys like Michael Wiley. Jonah Coleman went to Washington. He's kind of the bowling ball. And then, I'm blanking on their third other big back who graduated. That was a transfer from the SEC, and I'm totally blanking on his name. He scored the game-winning touchdown against Oklahoma. So those guys are all gone, and there was a lot of concern over the offseason. All right, hey, we need somebody to run the ball. They still returned Speedy Luke, former 4-star guy, track speed, but, a little bit on the slider side. But then, Krosky Merritt is probably is the big balanced all around back, and Quali Conley is kind of just 1B of that kind of balanced running back. Quali Conley came over, followed Brennan and staff from San Jose State. Had a really good game against USC at San Jose State. He's played in big environments before. Great all around player. You see the yards so far, but good catching the ball out of the backfield. I think if Krosky Merritt's not a go, he's going to be the bell cow for the most part. But they also have Kedrick Rossano, who transferred in, another former 4-star guy that really showed up against NAU. I think you're going to, if Krosky Merritt is out, I think you're going to see a lot of him. He's a little bit bigger, a little more powerful running back, redshirt freshman. And then I think you're also still going to see some Rayshon Speedy Luke in some way. And maybe this is the time where they figure out he hasn't gotten that many touches in these games so far, but some of that might be not trying to show how you're going to find creative ways to get your track star speed guy some touches with some blockers in front of him. But also when you're rotating guys in on the O-line, maybe not the best time to be trying screen passes on the road, but we'll see. I think some of Speedy Luke's usage will depend on what's going on in the offensive line, or if they're really trying to embrace the Big 12 smash mouth style. And I think Arizona's line has the capability to open holes when they have all their guys healthy. Wendell Moy is a road grader at left guard. I'd be running behind him a whole bunch. And if Josh Baker is back, I've seen them open some big holes, and don't have to be a great running back to get a bunch of yards that way. But also, I think Conley and Riscano, if they're the only two that are going, they're formidable. I think if Krosky Merritt's there, then I would expect Arizona to really try to pound the ball and probably do a lot of 2 tight end sets. And they even have a redshirt or a true freshman walk on. From my niece's high school, actually in Tucson, that he led them as a running back last year, CDO in Tucson, and now Arizona's converted him into a fullback, and he's been involved in a lot of the touchdowns on the ground so far this season. So I'd expect to see him and a lot of tight ends.
Love fullback talk. We embrace fullback talk here at Cocaine Willie, but the real star of the show for this Arizona Wildcat team is absolutely McMillan. Hetero McMillan is a bona fide superstar. He's going to be probably a top 5 pick in the NFL draft coming this season. He has one of the craziest stat lines in week 1. We already established that 10 catches, 300 yards, 4 touchdowns. Insane. How does the next week he go 2 catches for 14 yards or 11 yards or something like 11 yards in back-to-back weeks? Where's the dichotomy of this man? What is happening with this offense? Why? That's my first question. What happened with that game for them to be able to shut him down? And then what can we see from McMillan from like his basic baseline game?
So I think what you're asking is what a lot of Arizona fans were asking after that NAU performance. And then the real question is how much of that is they're vanillaing down the offense? How much of it is the new offensive line shuffling around at a lot of spots? There are some rumors that maybe a significant chunk of the team was recovering from COVID, which would be a whole other level of things. As a Arizona sports fan, when the Phoenix Suns were in the playoffs a few years ago in the Game 7 and they lost by like 40 because they all turns out had COVID after the fact. I don't know if I believe that or not. And a lot of it, I think, bluntly, is NAU's got a pretty good new coach, and they schemed their way and played really aggressively. And they, New Mexico was single covering T-Mac, and why would you do that? And even his, 90-yard touchdown, there was nobody within 30 yards of him. How does that happen? I don't know. So I would, if I was a K-State fan, I would not expect another NAU type performance from T-Mac. I'm not sure I'd expect 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. As an Arizona fan, I would certainly love that. But I think a lot of it is going to depend on what comes out of how Dino Babers and Brent Brennan and the staff try to attack the K-State defense, and how K-State tries to take McMillan out of the game and try to force some of these other guys to contribute. I think the expectation and hope for Arizona fans is there are those guys between the tight ends and other running backs and receivers that there's enough options to make teams pay for just blanketing T-Mac with 2 to 3 guys, because bluntly he kind of warrants it. But it's a little bit hard to say. There's so many variables there. I will say T-Mac has probably the most ridiculous catch radius you're going to see in college football this year, and hands, just like peak Larry Fitzgerald hands and like Calvin Johnson catch radius. It's just kind of insane. And then the most interesting thing to me was in that week 1, T-Mac he's one of those guys that doesn't look like he's running that hard when he's running fast. And then you're like, how is nobody catching up to him? And then I saw that in one of his long touchdowns, he actually had one of the highest miles per hour of any college player, the top 5 of that week. And it's like you watch it, it looks like he's just kind of like, long stride jogging kind of thing. Because he spent a lot of time in his offseason working on footwork and kind of those agility drills. He had a foot injury that there was a procedure, and they're very hush-hush on it, and kept him out of most of the offseason. Even a lot of the fall camp, he was just on the sidelines, not doing all the regular practicing stuff. So I think he's actually more dangerous than he was with all of the little, craft things he's worked on. But at the same time, I think he's going to find ways to get open, and Noah Fifita has had a habit of really zeroing in on targeting him. These guys are friends since like eighth grade, after all. And if I have T-Mac, I'm going to probably, when T-Mac is covered, he's actually open kind of thing. So it's going to be a really interesting thing. I think the most interesting thing is going to be how is K-State going to try to cover him, and if they're going to, how many resources they're going to commit to him, and how much is Arizona going to try to counter that. Part of me kind of expects Arizona to really go hard on the power running game with 2 tight ends and maybe do the full pack to try to lull K-State to sleep and then take some shots. Just classic basic football strategy on the offensive side, more so than in the UNM game where they were just like, hey, T-Mac's open, let's go score a touchdown. Great. But he's going to be a tough matchup for anyone in the Big 12 this season, whether this is a conference game or not.
Well, I think it's going to be a tough matchup, considering we had multiple guys who were playing zone or man and didn't quite know which role, whether we were playing zone or man last week, because that was a thing that happened. But speaking of defense, I do want to get to the Arizona defense. So looking at last year's defense, that was a pretty salty Arizona Wildcats defense. I think they finished top 25 in EPA per play and in other defensive efficiency metrics. But This year, so far through 2 games, they're just ahead of the Jayhawks at 54th out of 133 FBS teams in defensive efficiency, and that's measured based on EPA per play through the first 2 games, and that's according to College Football Insiders. Shout out to @StatsAwar, Parker Fleming, friend of the pod. What are the Wildcats doing defensively, and how does it differ, if at all, from last year? I know you mentioned offense hasn't really changed all that much. He hasn't tried to throw a wrench in something that's already working. How does the defense differ this year compared to last year? And how concerned are you that the regression, as it may appear through 2 games, is going to be something that sticks throughout the season?
Yeah, so I don't think in the broadest strokes, the defensive scheme has changed that much, save for one position group, which is also where there's the most turnover. And whether one caused the other or the other way around is up for debate. And that position group is the defensive line. So Arizona's scheme last year, they had, at least by official measurements, a lot more guys that were 3 to 350 on the D line. Their job was to occupy blockers, clear the way for Jacob Manu, another guy from the same high school as T-Mac and Noah Fafita, and 4-star tight end Keon Burnett at Cerebite High School. He was the last guy that was, offered a scholarship, and he might, be an all conference type linebacker. So Arizona's size on the front, they lost, I think there's 8 to 9 guys roster turnover. Some people transferred away. Bill Norton went to Texas, followed Johnny Nansen. He was one of those guys that came in from Georgia, was used to be a 4-star, never played at Georgia, came to Arizona, was a great block, eating up blocks and still making tackles and being disruptive. But Arizona has gotten generally a lot smaller across the defensive front. And also they are playing a much more attacking scheme, for better or worse, which makes kind of sense with smaller guys. Kevon Darton didn't play against NAU for some reason, transfer in from Syracuse as a relatively small defensive tackle. I think he's listed at like 270. But has always been productive. And the defensive line coach has talked about how they're going to be a lot more attacking. And Dwayne Aquina, the new defensive coordinator, is all about, they're more about being disruptive rather than, discipline. And that's kind of showed up, especially against UNM with a mobile quarterback where they overcommitted, lost contain on the edge. Is that something that they can learn from heading into Big 12 play in this proto Big 12 game? I think that remains an open question. There's certainly a lot of talent in the guys they brought in, and there's still some big bodies. Chubamai might be the biggest guy you're going to see all year. He's, I think, listed at like 347 at defensive tackle, big poly player. But, Trey Smith came in from San Jose State. That guy has the look of a potential NFL edge type player. Chase Kennedy transferred in from Utah, looked really good against NAU, but again, a little bit slighter. I'm personally, as an Arizona fan, I'm a little bit concerned with the Big 12. The modern Big 12 is not your dad's Big 12 where it was throw the ball around. It's a lot more, power running, smash mouth football, and a smaller defensive front and a little more attacking defensive front is going to be a little bit more risk reward kind of question. And I'm curious to see how that plays out starting with this game. I think this is the game that's going to be a real telltale sign. But everything else behind that, I don't think has particularly changed much. Takario Davis is a potential first-round pick at corner. They returned their safety group that really developed last year. Gunnar Maldonado went from everybody thinks is the worst player in the Pac-12 to hero of the Alamo Bowl all in one season. And the linebacking group is a little bit thin aside from Jacob Manu. They have Tay Brown starting, just kind of a down the middle linebacker, good run stopper. Maybe we'll struggle with sideline to sideline type things. And the one thing scheme wise that also has been adopted from last year's coaching staff, largely with Dwayne Aquina coming, he went to Texas for a half second and then came back as defensive coordinator. You're probably going to see the dollar package, where there's going to be 3 down linemen, 1 linebacker, and the rest are going to be defensive backs because they have a lot of depth in the secondary at safety. Genesis Smith is a guy they need to find ways to get on the field. Sophomore had an interception already this year. They've got Trayden Stukes, kind of plays that nickel corner spot, was all conference talent type last year. Jones Killebrew is a transfer in, former 4-star that's looked pretty good through 2 games. So I would expect for the first time this year, you're going to see that dollar package, which has really given opposing teams some fits because there's just so much athleticism out there. It's hard for passing teams to get around the defensive backs, the 9 or 7 of them that are out there. But also it makes it hard for some linemen to be able to, get a helmet on a helmet in the running game. And I'm curious to see how that plays out.
A position group you slightly mentioned, Jacob Manu is your leading tackler, and 21 total tackles on the year, fumble recovery, pass deflection. Within the linebacking core, is this a group that with him, you're going to hear his name the entire game? Are there others that maybe we should be on the lookout for, especially for a team like K-State that is going to be running the football a pretty good amount in this game? So I imagine we'll be hearing some linebackers and their names throughout the game.
Yeah, so I think the name that jumps out as the most vexing and intriguing linebacker on the Arizona roster is Justin Flo. That would fit that bill. Former 5-star linebacker at Oregon, struggled with some injury things and kind of struggles with. He does not struggle with intensity and tackling. I will say that he sometimes struggles with assignments and coverage. So if K-State is going to really, really commit to the run, one thing you could see is Justin Flo put in there as like, yeah, you're going to go tackle the running back whether he gets the ball or not, kind of thing. It's like the linebacker in the movie The Replacements. He's kind of that guy where he goes, he just sees red and he goes and tackles him. If you guys remember that old Keanu classic, I think there's maybe an opportunity to try to work him in, especially on obvious running downs. But also K-State can try to take advantage of that and get him to overcommit. But if Arizona's edge guys are more disciplined than they were against New Mexico, for example, maybe you can get away with turning Justin Flo loose. They have him on the kickoff team, and there's literally some videos of him going crazy against UNM in the second half, gearing up to go on a kickoff that's definitely going to be a touchback. He's just that kind of an intense guy. And this could be the game where it makes sense to see him get some run. Manu's going to probably hardly leave the field. I think Tay Brown is going to be the other guy that's probably going to feast because he's the guy that's better in run support than he is as he's more of a 3-down linebacker, more because there's not necessarily anybody else that's emerged yet. And he's generally in the right place at the right time, even if he doesn't have that sideline to sideline capability as much as he would like. But it's and there's some other guys that may rotate in. I also wouldn't be surprised. It kind of is that dollar package. Arizona last year had Martel Irby, started his college career as a running back, turned into a guy in the secondary. Arizona was playing him at the second linebacker spot in the Alamo Bowl, if you recall. He was interviewed after the game. They have some guys that I think may play some guys out of position at the linebacker spot to also just try to get some better balance in terms of coverage and guys that are still sure tacklers. Owen Goss was a guy that was a late transfer in that I think fits that bill a little bit. They're trying to find ways to get him on the field. So don't be surprised to see only one true linebacker on the field for a large chunk of this game in some form, whether they're lined up as a linebacker or in the secondary.
That's a strategy. I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna wait and see on it. I got one question. Is Ta'i Uiagalelei, is DJ's brother?
No, but I think he is like distantly. I think he might be like some kind of a cousin, but not a brother.
I nailed that name.
Chef, you nailed the pronunciation.
I nailed it.
Yeah.
I nailed it.
You actually did.
I live for the Polynesian names, and I'm doing a lot of research on this Arizona team because I like saying them. I think it's in my blood. But I do have a real question for you. Zooming out, we got this Wildcat matchup. We're fighting for a scratching post. We're doing all of that. I don't know how much research you've done on K-State and your scouting, but where's a area of K-State's offense or defense that you think Arizona can take advantage of, and vice versa?
Yeah, so part of the fun of moving to the Big 12 is a lot of this. I don't have a lot of time to get to know all these teams as much. The things I do know about K-State is they're good at running the ball and they have a mobile quarterback, which after that New Mexico game gives me some concerns if this defense is not disciplined. And I think that's where K-State can try to, like I said, we have a more attacking scheme. They're going to probably find ways to try to expose that, or they should, or they are bad at coaching, right? And maybe that means run some draws. Maybe that means run some more play action, some stretch plays where you get the edge to overcommit, right? And I think that's going to be a challenge for Arizona, and I think an opportunity for K-State. I think when Arizona's on offense, I think it's less about the matchup with K-State and just Arizona being able to execute their game plan, because they have the talent to a man almost, maybe, a hole or two on the offensive line with some injuries, where if they execute and do what they intend to do, I think they're going to be able to move the ball effectively. The big question there is the O-line, and I think that's where K-State should also probably be trying to just, NAU had a lot of success. They were blitzing all the time. And when the center was out making the calls on those, that created a lot of problems for Arizona. I'm not sure it'll be as much of a problem. And with another week of practice and all this film for them to learn from, if this O-line can give Noah Fafita time to read the defense and make K-State pay for that aggression that I'm going to guess they're going to bring on the defensive side, I think that's got to be Arizona's game plan. I think it's going to be conservative, pow, deep pass to T-Mac. And like that kind of seems like it fits in with, what K-State's game plan might want to be most of the time, or the Big 12 in general. But that's kind of my my sense of things. But you guys can tell me where I'm wrong. You guys got to see Arizona in the Alamo Bowl last year. What are you guys thinking?
I mean, I saw them versus New Mexico, and I mean, after watching that Tulane game, I'm nervous as all get out. I mean, you have Calvin Johnson out on that a Polynesian Calvin Johnson. I mean, what are we supposed to do with that? I don't understand. Our corners are all 6 foot and under, so I don't know what we're gonna do. I honestly don't. I don't know what that's why that 2 for 11 game last week gives me some kind of like hope, but I don't know.
And Chef, you said it on our preview last week, but if we don't crack open the playbook even slightly more than we did for Tulane, then I don't know what we're doing. Because I just, man,
is this the Spider-Man meme happening right now? We're just pointing at each other.
The offensive play calling last week was absolutely horrible, and Chef, to your credit, you said after the first play, you're like, the play calling is shit. Matt and I were both like, there's been one play. You got to give it a break.
I could just tell.
Nostradamus. He was Nostradamus.
It was bad.
He wasn't wrong. He was just early.
Yeah.
I mean, you could just tell like that. I mean, opening play of we got a 4th down stop, and this is what we're gonna do.
He was exit polling our offense, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
This was the result.
So and with the DBs, the missed assignments and stuff last week, I don't feel great about the defense, although that is the exception for this defense. They've had a couple of games the last 2 years where they've really just screwed up and not looked anything like themselves. And really the rule for them has been, we're one of the more efficient defenses in all of FBS. So I hope that they can make the adjustments and fix it in a short week and a short turnaround, but we'll see, man. We'll see.
One of those things I'd be looking for too, that I was trying to tweet to make Dino Babers, when he's calling plays, do this against NAU, but they never really did, kind of. I would be shocked if you don't see a pretty good shot taken as a tight end seam with Keon Burnett, former 4-star guy that's really bulked up. If K-State gets aggressive and you got safeties drifting out to the side to cover T-Mac, you should be able to scheme your way to a few 20-plus yard gains to the relatively talented tight ends that it feels like they haven't wanted to show that too much yet, but I feel like it's coming, and I feel like this might be the game where it happens.
My God. They've got hidden plays, Matt. They got hidden plays. What are we gonna do?
Heads are falling off.
Well, before any heads fall off, Brett, get us your final score prediction, and we'll give ours, and then we'll let you plug whatever you've got going on over at Wildcat Radio 2.0.
Oh man, this is one of those games where it's been circled for a while, where it's going to tell us what to expect out of this Arizona team in terms of the season over/under. And I've seen enough to not want to give this team the benefit of the doubt through the first 2 games, but I also would not be surprised if Arizona pulls it off. I think on the road, it's going to be tough on a Friday night. I'm actually going to give it to K-State. I'm going to say 27-24. So right. Arizona will cover.
I can respect that. This is a tough spot for any team to go on the road on a short week when y'all played a pretty late game then have to practice on Sunday and have to travel out to a new place that you haven't been to. I can respect that score. I think it's going to be a little high flying. I think it's going to be 38-31 Cats. I'm not biased, but it's
Which
just
Cats? You have to specify.
you cheeky boy, you. K-State. I think we're going to pull it out. It's going to be tough. I mean, honestly, I think I could see us going down by multiple scores. I could see it happening.
I could see either team, and it's a close game in the fourth. I mean, I have it even higher from a scoring perspective.
Holy shit.
I have 41-38 K-State. I will say this. I think the teams are very evenly matched, and 3 points seems like an appropriate win, like the winner, loser, whatever. Just with the home field advantage. I'm really kind of putting that into perspective a little bit. This atmosphere is going to be one of the best ones we've had since May. I mean, a lot of people are bringing up 2014 Auburn, which was a huge, but I would even say like 2022 Texas, a night game in the Bill.
This game is gonna have. This one's gonna bury that game.
I'm just saying, there's been night games at our stadium are
cherished,
are awesome. And I'm hoping for Arizona fans that might be listening to this, like if you're coming to Manhattan,
get out there, man.
It's gonna be really fun the entire day. So I'm going 41-38. I think it's going to be kind of a high flying game. K-State's offense is going to put something together here. And I think it's going to be a real big battle on the offensive
41
side.
points.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a crazy game. Again, to any Arizona fans who are coming up to Manhattan, hit up Annie Mae's Parlor. It's one of the best pregame spots in the Big 12. It'll be one of the best postgame spots as well after the game.
Yeah.
So win, lose, or draw, you'll have a good time if you go to Annie Mae's. I'm gonna go 31-30 Cats from Kansas.
There you go.
It's going to be a close matchup, man. I really do agree that I think these are two very evenly matched teams. And I think when you look at some of the lesser experienced position groups, it's like Arizona's D-line and K-State's offensive line going up against each other, like the DBs versus the wide receivers. Like after last week,
a banged up K-State O-line, by the way, banged up. No Hadley, maybe no Carver. It's gonna get crazy.
It sounds like Spider-Man meme again, man. We're just we're just looking at each other, pointing at the other, and being like, "You."
I don't think it's going to be over 120 points, but it's going to be a high flying game. I think it'll be over under 61, 60.
I mean, there's a world where Arizona puts it all together and they shock the fans in Manhattan. Or there's a world where that O-line struggles and they crumble on the road. It's going to be an interesting thing. One thing I would say we should all be able to agree on, like Arizona State has the territorial cup against the matchup. We need to have like a scratching post trophy for every future matchup.
That's why we need to be wearing we also need to be wearing the cat script.
I was just about to ask him, what do you think of these Arizona uniforms, the red? What do you think?
I mean, that new helmet looked pretty sexy. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
I agree.
Also, I maybe put this specific Wildcat country shirt on for you guys just because this seemed like the most appropriate attire.
Shout out to Home Field, not a sponsor, but could be.
Could be.
We have Home Field. We are an affiliate program with Home Field. So Wildcat Radio AZ for 15% off your first order from Home Field.
Amazing.
Put in the promo code.
Put in a word for us.
Bob, send an email now.
Put in a word.
Brett, give us. I guess you've already given us your score prediction, but tell the people where to find you, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, you can find us where all podcasts can be found. We don't generally do the live video format. We're trying to explore maybe doing a little bit more of that. Also, we always plug at the end. One of our gimmicks to try to get engagement is to have people rate and review our pod on iTunes, and we will read it on the air. So K-State fans, you can come in and review bomb us. I don't care. We'll read it. Or tell us that we're great and hilarious. Hopefully we'll be able to have one or multiple of you guys on this week and come join us. We always like to guest with, or bring guests in that can kind of tell us more about the teams that bluntly they know. You guys know more about K-State than Adam and I would. But we try to put stuff out weekly, have guests every time. Like I said, we try to have fun with it. We're pretty active on the Twitter machine, more so during football season, especially during the games, as my craft beer consumption tends to increase. When Arizona was down to NAU, I maybe live tweeted I'm about to open a 10.5% triple IPA and either be a happy drunk or sad drunk. And it kind of turned out more kind of in between because Arizona still won, but it just not very pretty. We try to have fun with it. Like I said, we're happy to be a part of the College Huddle Network. We love interacting with guys like yourself and the fan base, and keep it civil on the Twitter machine, but we'll also have fun with it.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate having you on. That's going to do it for us today. Once again, we want to shout out our sponsors, Pat's Beef Jerky and Annie Mae's Parlor. You see it there on the screen if you're watching on video. If you are not watching on video, check out the description for the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're choosing to listen to this. Visit patsbeefjerky.com and use the promo code CATS for 10% off your next order. Additionally, we are the K-State representative, and Brett is the Arizona representative on the College Huddle, which is the largest community of fan-driven content in the nation. So if you want to see more of our work, more of Brett's work, and the other folks over at Wildcat Radio, check them out at thecollegehuddle.com and follow them on social media at College Huddle. Last but not least, you can follow our show at Cocaine Willie on YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, or Instagram, or follow us individually. I'm at Bob Trollsby. Chef is at Chef Andre Napier. Fireball Matt is at Matt Marchesini. And Brett is at Brett D. Barry. Chef.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug, baby.
We are all coke and no joke. Wildcat Country. Kansas.
Let's fucking ride.
Kansas. Wildcat Country. Let's ride.
Let's ride.
Go Cats.